Howdy. This is Mission Texas.
A political podcast about winning Texas by 2032, or else we may lose the White House for a generation.
I'm one of your hosts, Alex Clark.
And I am Kate Rumsey.
Other podcasts may focus on the day-to-day or the next election, but we are keeping the eyes of Texas on the bigger prize. What happens after the next census?
Well, Happy New Year, folks. This is a very special recap and resolutions episode here on Mission Texas. We're going to talk about each of our episodes and maybe give a resolution for Texas Democrats in the new year. And we're going to do it with a little help from our friends at the West Wing, because we love a pop culture reference here on the podcast. So we're going to try to keep score as to who can make the most West Wing references on this podcast. And then maybe at the end we'll end with some predictions for the new year. So how's that sound, Alex?
That works for me. What's
Okay.
next?
Well, you got it. All right, you got the first one. What's next? Indeed. Well, first, can I ask you, how has the podcast gone so far? Has anything surprised you? Has it met your expectations?
I'll say I'm just really glad that we got started right away. I know that we were kind of nervous as we getting into this. Are we prepared? Have we done enough legwork? Do we know the first thing about podcasting? The answer is probably no to everything. But we just did it anyways.
Yeah.
And I've been shocked with the response that we've had. Like, people have come up to me in IRL, in real life, and said, I listened to the pod. I think it's great. We've had statewide candidates reach out to us to get on to the podcast, which is just incredible to me. And I think it's having the intended effect of getting people to think bigger in the party, to change the conversation we're having internally within the tent. And I think that's an important thing for growing the tent where it needs to be come 2030 and beyond. I think I've already started to notice that there's more of a discussion of it, like within the talking points of candidates. I've noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, I'm the same. I was very surprised as to the reaction that we got from people, a lot of candidates reaching out because they realized maybe we need to have more podcasts and platforms like this. So I think that it's been really great. I'm very proud of us for having put out 12 episodes so far, one each week. I can't believe we've done it. And I think I didn't really appreciate the logistics behind a lot of what happens in a podcast, much like how we learned in the West Wing, what goes on in those offices and how much work that it likely entails being president. So I think those were some things that I was surprised by with this, because you and I are two lawyers and veteran military background. We've got kids, and I never have done a podcast before. So it's been very interesting. Well, let's dive in. The first episode that we had, other than our intro, was with the chair of the Texas Democratic Party, Kendall Scudder. And what was interesting for me about that episode is that it came out after some news came out with the party and how he had closed down the Austin headquarters and now is opening up offices all around the state. And we even had someone reach out to us and DM'd us on social media saying, how dare we platform this person who's closing down these offices? And I thought, how can we be a podcast about Democrats in Texas and not talk to our chair as media? And so anyways, did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience to go through, especially because we offered the opportunity for this person, pretty high up official formally within the party, to come on and speak and provide an alternative viewpoint. I'm not trying to pick winners and losers. Same way Kendall says the party doesn't need to be in the business of deciding who's going to run in each race and who's going to be the winner of each of those races. I think every single person who self-identifies as the Texas Democrat should be a part of the conversation. Kendall's a longtime friend of mine. There's no secret about that. But if he's doing something that you don't think is good, or you have some constructive criticism or just criticism, I'm not here to hide that. I think the more voices we can bring into this, the more people we have sitting at the table, the better. So that's an open
Yeah.
invitation. If
Yeah.
you specifically have something that you want to talk about that the Texas Democratic Party should be doing better, I'm all ears, and I think we'd love to hear about it. So
Yeah.
reach out.
Yeah. And also, I don't like the idea of just closing off voices to the, about this conversation and talking about not allowing people to talk about what's happening or even giving him a shot at understanding what's going on in the party. I know that he has talked a lot about like, look, we have to do something different. Like it hasn't been working. And maybe we need to have a better field strategy where we have offices all over the place. And I think that's something that he said is that, half the state doesn't have precinct chairs. Some counties don't have a chair for the infrastructure of that party. And it's very interesting to hear from him how few folks there are really organizing their own neighborhoods. And so I thought that was a very interesting point. And I think if I were to give us a resolution, I have a whiteboard, I might put number one, just look up, like, do you even have a precinct chair? Is there a chair for the county in your area? And, maybe have a thought about what that is. If you don't have a chair, then think about being it. It's better than nothing, right? Like
That's right.
you just talking to a few neighbors is better than nobody talking to any neighbors. I think that's one resolution I would give our state party as we go forward.
I think it was the arc of the show where Sam Seaborn agrees to take over a congressional campaign for a candidate who had passed away
out in Orange
in
County.
California.
Yeah.
I remember there was a really poignant line in there, which is there are worse things than losing an election, right? Even if you're in an area of the state where you don't see a realistic shot of your local candidates winning, it all moves the ball forward, and putting your values in line is the right thing to do in and of itself. But just going back to the merits of what Kendall has done, has moved the headquarters out of Austin up to Dallas and has opened field offices around the state. Look, I loved living in Austin. I went there for law school. I spent 2 additional years there clerking for a federal judge. Austin's a great place to live. It's a wonderful community. Lots of fun things to do, great fitness opportunities and outdoor spaces. And look, I don't have to sell anybody on how wonderful Austin is, I don't think, within our party. But I think we must recognize that Austin is probably the most unlike the rest of the state as a place can be.
Yeah.
And if you have the headquarters of the party in a place that is so unlike the rest of the state, even people with the best intentions, and even if they're, don't intend to exclude other areas of the state, you kind of you're a product of your environment. You might not understand what the rest of the state looks like and is going through if you are kind of in that Austin bubble. And I say bubble, with kindness
Lovingly.
in my heart. I love that bubble. It's a great bubble.
Yeah.
When I went to Austin College in Sherman, Texas, we referred to the Austin College campus as a bubble, and it was.
Yep.
And it was. But we can't be living in our bubbles, not with the stakes that are coming down in 2030.
It reminds me of that episode where they were in Indiana in the West Wing, and Josh and Toby and Donna were stuck and they'd missed the motorcade. Yeah. And they were outside of their DC bubble having to talk to like real people. And one of them lost a bet and had to say, I think it was Toby, I work in the White House with every single person and get the reaction. And I loved it because you got to see like what real people outside of that bubble, from their own little DC West Wing bubble are saying and confronting that. I also loved it because there was a point in that episode where they were talking to a gentleman at a bar who was trying to get their kid into Notre Dame. And I'm like, yes, like go Irish. I love that. But I think that it's very similar to that we need to be confronted with people outside our regular blue areas here in the state. So that was the Kendall Scudder episode. And the second one we had was with Christian Carranza, who is a candidate in one of the most flippable state house races in the state. She's in San Antonio, Bexar County. And it was a ladies only episode. I remember it was the day that, or day after that, the day of that Taylor Swift dropped her album. So we were talking about that. And she is somebody who Alex has known in the past. And I just recently have gotten to know her. But what I think is really great to hear from folks like her is that this is a Trump midterm, right? So this is 2026. It's like 2018. And in 2018, according to Vicki Goodwin, as we get to her episode, which is number 11, they were able to flip like 12 seats back in 2018. And if you think, and I think John Turner was a part of that, who we've talked to, Julie Johnson was a part of that class. And you think about like, if we have the most flippable seat in San Antonio, then she's, maybe she's got some really great odds at winning with this blue wave that could be coming in 2026.
James Tallarico, Nathan Johnson, also another episode.
Yeah. A lot of that class of 2018, who else might we be able to flip in this coming election? So I think it's really exciting to think about. But she also talked about, similar to Kendall, speaking to working class issues. And I think that's another resolution that I would give based on what we've heard, which is just some messaging discipline about, and I think we saw this in the November election with the governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia, and then the mayor's race in New York, which is affordability and like working class issues and how that really affects us here in our area. But another thing I really loved hearing about was just the cultural differences between San Antonio and how I've felt in Dallas, and how people in San Antonio have really grown up in that area. And the thing that she leads with is like where she went to high school. And that's a real touch point for people. Whereas I think here in Dallas, people have a tendency to, I think, to not be originally from this area or grown up in this area. So I don't think talking about your high school would resonate as much. But I thought that those were some really interesting takeaways with her. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I love that we got to have Christian on so early on. We went back to, God, it makes me feel so old. We were campus organizers together in 2014, and I had lived in San Antonio for 4 years right out of college because my wife and I did Teach for America in San Antonio. And I stuck around as I did that campaign with her, and then joined the Air Force, going through basic training, which is right there in San Antonio. Most people were coming in by plane and bus and train, and my wife dropped me off after breakfast. So have fun. I'll see you in a couple months.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, San Antonio is a wonderful place. It is so different, you're right, than Dallas. And I think as a thread, as a through line, it is just like all politics is local, right? You gotta tailor it to the community you're running in. You can't do these cookie cutter campaigns, especially if the cookie cutting, if the playbook is coming from DC or from New York or Los Angeles or Chicago or literally anywhere else, right? Because Texas is so unique. Yeah. And as a state, it's unique. But if there's anything I know about Texans, is that they love their part of Texas more than any other part of Texas. And that's where they will talk till they're blue in the face about the rivalries between the big parts of the state, and why theirs is better.
Well, I think that gets into a game that I'd like to play. If we can. I thought it'd be appropriate because Texans love a rivalry between their cities. If you're from Houston, you make fun of Dallas. And if you're from Dallas, you make fun of Austin, and vice versa. And so I think I would like to hear, and I looked up the data, how many precinct chairs by percentage are in each of the cities and their main counties. So we've got Fort Worth, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. So these are the 4 major big cities. And I've looked up the data from the Secretary of State website as well as the counties. And I want to see a little bit of a rivalry. Who has the most precinct chairs by percentage? Because we know they're not all the same as far as population. And I thought I'd get you to guess here because we like a game.
I'm glad that you're giving me the first guess, because I have a strong inclination what this probably is.
Yeah. Okay. I know the answer, so I'm not going to guess, but I want you to. Number 5 the lowest amount. Who do you think has the lowest amount of precinct chairs by percentage?
Ooh, the lowest. Okay, I feel
Yeah,
less confident on the lowest. Can I start with the highest?
sure. But I don't
I
know.
I
I
I
don't.
think I think Austin takes the cake. I think they're
Okay.
far and beyond above. Again, just having lived in Austin, this is another one of the things I think I feel okay about the headquarters moving out of Austin, the state party headquarters moving out of Austin. Because like the Travis County Democratic Party, like the county party, is really strong and they're really well organized. Um, Back in my battleground Texas days with Christian, I had met Jan Soifer, who was the party chair there in the county, Travis County, and
Hmm.
she's a judge now that I got to intern for when I was in law school. So came full circle. But
Wow.
they have always their tax assessor collector, their county party structure, like the number of volunteers. They're really engaged in Austin. It is a
Yeah.
as of a dot in the red Texas as you can get. So my final answer, I think Austin takes the cake. Is that right?
Okay. I'm gonna get there. So we're gonna get to
Okay.
number one.
All
I'd
right.
like to go
Okay.
from
Fair enough.
5 to
It's all a
1.
secret.
But do you have a guess on the least?
Least of the major cities. I'm actually gonna throw my new home under the bus and say it's Dallas.
Okay. Wow. Geez.
I
Normally you want to
know.
say
I
your
think I think
own.
it's us. I think it's us. And
I
I think it's Dallas. And I think it's
think it's us.
because there's something about the Dallas like voting culture that has not been established. The activism culture has not been as robust here. There's a great club scene. People are very involved in their clubs in Dallas, but for whatever reason, and it goes throughout the entire like federal to municipal, like the turnout for our city elections is just I find it shocking and embarrassing.
Yeah. I think that's a big problem here is that we just don't turn out the vote, even though we're a big blue area. So, okay, number 5, you got it wrong. I'm sorry to
Oh, sorry,
say.
Dallas. I apologize.
Yeah, so it's Fort Worth, Tarrant County, which I'm really sad about because it is such a purple area. We heard from Allison Campolo, our 6th
Yeah.
episode, about how they have flipped in so many races and they are just on the verge. And if they could just maybe get a few more precinct chairs, like that could be
Yeah.
really helpful in their areas. There are areas that people are just not even getting folks talking to. So they have 843 precincts and 263 of them have precinct chairs. That's 31%.
Oh, wow.
31%. Yeah. And Kendall was saying on average, it's half. Like we have half covered in our state.
That's crazy.
So that's number
Tarrant
5.
County really is like the highest ROI.
I know. I'm telling you,
We
if you
can
could
make a
just
huge impact on the state if we just gave
yes, a little bit more,
more
like
attention and resources.
And if Tarrant County goes, so does the state and so does the country. So, in my opinion, we need to I was at a Tarrant County Christmas party and I'm literally like recruiting precinct chairs as I was there. I'm like, you should be a precinct chair. What does that do?
Yeah.
Oh, let me tell you, like you're in a club. Like you are fit for this. Like just go call your neighbors. Okay.
Yeah.
So number 4 is San Antonio, Bexar County. So you're a little off with Dallas. But I have I don't know what's going on in Bexar County, and I'd love to hear from more people on that. But they have 776 precincts, and 277 of those have precinct chairs, and that's 35%. So Fort Worth
who we should bring on the podcast? We should bring on Jennifer Longoria.
Really?
Yeah, she is a not the actress.
I know. Like who's that?
An organizer. She had been the state organizer for Elizabeth Warren, and then when she lost the primary, was like deputy director for Biden. And we had worked together in Battleground, Texas. And she had been really involved with the San Antonio for Obama. I think they called it Alamo Obama, which is a great name.
I love it.
Yeah, but she's really plugged in the San Antonio political scene, and she's a friend of mine. Maybe we ought to bring her on.
Let's get her on.
What's going on in San Antonio?
What's going on down there? Number 4, San Antonio. So number 3, this one, I guess it's has exceeded your expectations. Does not meet mine, but it's Dallas.
Sorry,
Dallas is number 3. 798 precincts. 358 of them have precinct chairs, and that is a 45%. on
Well,
average.
that's
So
that's a
that's,
testament to the good work of our party chair and vice chair, Cardell Coleman and Yasmin Simon. Good work,
yeah,
guys.
shout out
And
to
I
them. Yeah.
apologize for ever doubting you.
I know. Jeez. So that's number 3. But I think we have a lot of room for growth. I mean, there's just so many areas I think that we've reflected on, that it's not just about flipping areas, it's turning out the vote in the really blue parts of our state. And I think that we can be doing that more. And I have a precinct chair, so I can't speak to that, but I can certainly help her do her job. All right, now then we got number 2 and number 1. So we got a prediction for you. Austin is number 1. So number 2 is, drumroll, Houston.
Okay, yeah.
So
Okay.
it is. So Austin takes the cake. It is incredible. Like, what you just said is so accurate. So Houston has 1,166 precincts, such a huge area, and 547 of them have precinct chairs. So that's about 47%. So not much bigger than Dallas. So Dallas, I'm looking at you. We need you to like turn out some more precinct chairs so we can beat Houston at least.
Gotta be Houston.
Yeah, we gotta be Houston. I'm looking at you. And then Austin. This is crazy. So it's a smaller city, 287 precincts, 215 of them have precinct chairs. That is a 75% of precinct chairs in Austin. That's crazy. I cannot believe you. So it went from 47% in Houston to 75 in Austin. Like I just can't
Austin's
accept
gonna be
this.
just fine without the TDP.
Yeah, you're gonna be fine out there. They're doing the Lord's work. But I think one of the things I think about with Houston is that it's not a coincidence in my mind that we've seen and heard people like, I read Lone Star Left, which is a Substack and incredible daily Substack. So I read, and she was making the case about how Houston's going to be the place where we are turning out voters, and it's going to be the place where we really need to talk about for flipping the state. And I think that seeing this, it makes sense. And it's you've seen Gavin Newsom. Where did he come through when he was in the state after the redistricting fight? And it was in Houston, because it's such a large city and has more precinct chairs than the others, even though it's not Austin. But it's like so ginormous, and it's more organized than our other cities.
I think Texans forget just the scale of it. Like, Houston is the 4th biggest city in the country, and it's probably not too long before it'll be number 3.
Yeah.
Houston is, just geographically massive, but also like by population, it's just so many people. And I think we're not alone in recognizing the opportunity there. I think the Republicans are very aware of the issues that would happen if we were able to really maximize turnout there. Because I remember early in this election cycle, Governor Abbott said, this is the quote, I just pulled it up from the Texas Tribune. He said, "I've got $90 million in my bank account, and I'm going to spend most of it in Harris County, Texas," which is where Houston is, "to make sure precinct by precinct, we turn out voters who voted in the presidential election, turn out voters who never voted before. We've got to win Harris County and make Harris County dark red."
Yeah. I don't think there's a coincidence there. I think that, and there's also a reason why I think when Kamala Harris was coming through Texas, she had a rally in Houston, and you just see a lot of things going on in Houston.
That also may have had something to do with Beyonce being there, but
Beyonce, and I think there was a funeral for a congresswoman. But I just think that you don't see a lot of the like big national or statewide candidates doing things as much in the other cities, which is maybe we need to make a case for that. But I think there's going to be we're going to all be watching Houston and Harris County. So anyway,
here's a crazy stat before we move on from Houston. In the same Texas Tribune article, it says that Harris County is where 1 in 6 Texans live.
Wow. Yeah, exactly.
What?
And how many blue are there of them? So, and and highly diverse. So just to recap, number 5 was Fort Worth, number 4, San Antonio, number 3, very sad, Dallas. I'm looking at you, number 2, Houston, and number 1, Austin. So anyway, so we have a couple other episodes that Nathan Johnson was our 3rd, who's running for Attorney General. He's a state senator here in the North Texas area, but we are interested in talking to the other people running in his primary, the AG primary. So we're going to talk to Joe Jaworski. We've also been in touch with Tony Box, who's a new candidate, also very much sponsored by Vote Vets, which is an organization that we're close to. Shout out to them. But I wonder, and then we had our fourth episode, which was with Alex Andrade, who's a fundraiser. And I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts or reflections on either of those episodes?
Yeah, this is maybe the thing that people talk to me the most about whenever they're just like, that's something I didn't know before. That's really interesting. Senator Nathan Johnson did a crazy number of episodes of Dragon Ball Z's music for in
Yeah.
America. I was trying to explain this to Kate before we interviewed him, just about how much of a cultural impact Dragon Ball Z has on young men, at least. Is really kind of incredible. But
Yeah.
no, in all seriousness, as far as what we're actually here to talk about, I think that Alex Andrade made some really interesting points about kind of the efficiency of our dollars and how we can use them better. We haven't released the episode on some other kind of donors that we've interviewed, but I think they also make the point that you can spend money in ways that are smarter than others.
Yeah.
And I think a lot about how even a little podcast like ours, not a very expensive endeavor, it costs money that we'll need to just so y'all know, listeners, we will be trying to fundraise in the new year. It can make a big impact. That's fairly
Hmm.
low dollar lift, but can make a big impact. And then I think it's a matter of that kind of mindset shift too, with Nathan talked about seeing the opportunity, believing that the change is possible, because so often we've convinced ourselves that the state's too expensive or it's just not going to happen, and those can kind of become self-fulfilling prophecies. And there's really no good reason for it. I think Texas is ripe for opportunity. Um, buy the dip is what I always say. And
Yeah.
that's the thing I take out of those two episodes is
Yeah.
both in terms of dollars and cents, but also in terms of kind of that unquantifiable sense of optimism and hope that has to happen.
Right. Yeah, I think that for me, it's just learning about who all is fundraising. It's not just the Senate candidates who are raising the dollars. It's the down ballot people who, if you give them $100, say you give $100 to your state house candidate versus $100 to the Senate candidates, like your money's going to go way farther with a state house rep candidate because their budget just isn't as big. And also just giving dollars, like recurring donations is really important. That's something that I think I've learned and heard from them, which is, it's a predictable amount of money that is coming in every month. So if you're giving $5 every month, like that's meaningful because they know that that's coming in a predictable way and not just these like chunks at a time. And so I think that's a third resolution for people is just like, if you're going to donate, like figuring out the best ROI for your money and where that could go, and not just to these like flashy people that we all are enamored with at first, like because we all want to be heard of being the person supporting Jasmine Crockett or James Talarico, but really thinking about the folks down ballot and other groups that you can support as well.
Yeah, and not only did it at the different levels for this cycle, but thinking long term, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what happens next November, we have to keep our eyes on 2030, right? That's where we really have to make sure we get this right. We have a great opportunity to be a part of the redistricting of 5 new congressional seats. That in and of itself is going to be really important at the national level for Congress. But it's also going to be important for the next decade of what our legislature looks like. We're going to be redrawing all those seats too. And then,
Right.
as we always try to point out, like the way the electoral college works is if we get 5 new seats, that means we're getting 5 new electoral college votes, and we're getting them at the same time that other places are losing them. And so if there are ways you can spend money that will outlast any given campaign, if it can help an issue you care about, or if it can help further a conversation, or to build infrastructure, to register voters, right? The things that you don't necessarily typically associate with a one and done campaign.
So that's our first 4 episodes. The next ones were with Cliff Walker, who was luckily my mentor from the LBJ Women's Campaign School, a long time just person in the party. I loved hearing the history of the party with him. And then we had Allison Campolo, which is we briefly mentioned from Tarrant County, the chair of Tarrant County Democrats. I think one of the things that I thought was the biggest takeaway I got from Cliff, which kind of came around the same time as our election that happened in the fall, which is that we have to stop the navel gazing of like, what should we be doing as Democrats? And I remember hearing this debate when Mamdani won and then all the other governors won. Like, do we need to elect more progressives? Do we need to elect more moderates? Do we need to elect certain kinds of Democrats? And I think he would say, based on that, I was like, let's stop talking about it that way. Like, we need to talk about what we can all do for voters. That is the navel gazing discussion that, like, I think turns away people. And then maybe we're a party that elects an Abigail Spanberger and a Mamdani. Like, that's okay. And that is the party that we're in. We're a big tent. And let's talk about what we can actually provide our folks in our constituencies instead of that like progressive versus moderate debate, which I think we all have engaged in.
Well, especially in a state like ours, right? Like, let's figure out how we win first.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's all so speculative and academic. Like, we have to win the legislature back. And all the talk about whether we're going to win a Senate seat or not this cycle, like, that would be great. Be very happy for James or Jasmine to be our next senator. But my question, I think, is more important, like, for the long-term health of our party and just consequentially, what's going to help us take back the Texas legislature? And wishing it weren't as divided up the way it is doesn't accomplish anything. We have to win in the districts as they are drawn. And if someone can help us do that, that's what we need. If someone will hurt us to do that, that's what we need to avoid. That's the way I think about it.
Well, I think that gets into our 7th episode with Mahela Puisa, which is, it was really fun to talk to her because she and I grew up together in the same schools and public schools in North Texas. And she was saying, like, we need to stop all speaking as a monolith. Like, it's okay to speak in terms of issues that pertain to your area. And we should all be okay with that. And let's not like just all talk about that. We can all talk about gun safety and abortion and healthcare, but what about the issues that pertain to that particular area? And I really appreciated that kind of wake up call for her, because she's saying like she was able to flip a seat, or not flip, it was a newly drawn seat in Collin County that it was believed to potentially go to a Republican, and she was able to keep it as a Democrat. And that she was talking about recapture in public schools. And going back to the West Wing, it reminds me of the Let Bartlet Be Bartlet episode, where we should just let our candidates be authentically them and talk to the issues that pertain to the area they're trying to speak to, and not force some other version of a Democrat on them.
Right. We shouldn't presume to know, right, what message is going to resonate in an area of Texas that we don't live in.
Right.
I think that's a good point. Great Bartlett B. Bartlett reference.
And then the 8th episode we had was with your friend John Turner, who is a former representative, part of the class of people who flipped seats in 2018. I think one of the things that he said that really stuck with me was that we need to maybe do better messaging between cycles, that we can, as Democrats, maybe advertise a little bit better, and how we as Democrats also can lead with patriotism. And it's really interesting to me to hear that, because it does feel like as a party, we don't necessarily wave the like patriotic flag as much as we could. And I think that he was saying that, in fact, we do. We are a party of patriots, and that we should be talking more about that, especially with the No Kings rallies that were happening this fall and summer, that you saw more people talking about democracy and patriotism and 1776 and our history, and that he thinks that as Democrats, we can turn up the volume on that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think when you do it in an intentional way, and you are getting out ahead of issues that Republicans might try to use against you. I remember him talking about some of those key endorsements he was able to acquire early in the process from like the police association or the firefighters or whoever. I think that can be so important, and it doesn't have to be the same kinds of people in every district, but being really thoughtful about what are kind of the easy ways some voters might check out, that if they had a permission structure in place, they could come around to doing something new, something different, which is voting for a Democrat, right? Like he told the story of a woman who said, well, now that I know you're a Democrat, we don't need to continue this conversation because my husband's a police officer. He was able to immediately say, well, I have the endorsement of the Dallas Police Association. And that was a new thing, and it surprised her. And they were able to have
Right.
a new and different conversation than one she was expecting to have. So I think, especially when we're trying to do new things, like take power back to win in areas where Democrats haven't traditionally won, we have to be thoughtful about what is it that these people who are either persuasion targets or just getting them off the couch, right, to show up and vote in the election. What is it that they are going to need for that permission structure? And sometimes that's the key endorsement from an organization or from maybe a moderate Republican or what have you. But I think it can be helpful to think about what those might be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And, I wrote an op ed with the Dallas Morning News about my journey as someone who grew up as a Republican and thinking everybody was Republican and not really realizing that, like, oh, my actual uh, hopes and dreams for my family and our country align more with the Democratic Party, and switching and putting on a different hat, so to speak. And maybe, and have other people approaching me about that and saying like, oh, that's me, and saying it's okay. Like, it's okay. You have other people out there. You can find a community with folks like us who may not have always been a part of the party, but are now. And you're welcome to that permission structure that we're saying that this is a big tent. You're welcome here. I wanted to pause a little bit and reflect on how the West Wing and how they had Texans portrayed as Democrats in the West Wing. Like,
Yeah,
can
from the
you
jump.
recall? Yeah, from the
Yeah, I
jump.
mean,
Okay,
what was his name? The senator who became his first vice president. And
John
I need
Hoynes.
John
Yeah,
Hoynes. Yeah,
can you believe that? Like, we had a Democratic senator from Texas as the VP. Like, I can't believe that. Yeah.
and not so far fetched. Hopefully, coming up soon. But yeah, John Hoynes was an interesting character in that show. But then obviously, when the show was coming to its end, the charismatic congressman from Houston, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Santos,
think it
Congressman
was. Yeah.
Santos,
Congressman Santos. He was the
also
mayor.
a fellow Air Force man, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
He was a pilot, I think still in the Guard while he was a congressman. I remember the episode where he had to take a break from the presidential campaign to go do his like weekend tour or whatever.
Yeah.
And they thought it was a publicity stunt. And he's like, I have to do this anyways. And they're going to show photos of me hopping in my jet, which I thought
Yeah,
was really
that's
cool.
right.
Yeah, a lot of veterans also in the West Wing, which I really appreciated. Leo McGarry, I think he said he was a Vietnam vet. There was a lot of folks. The guy who took over Sam's job, who was in the Orange County race, yeah, he showed up sometimes in his uniform. So I really liked that, and also the portrayal of Texans as Democrats, because I think people don't really think of that these days. That in the national conversation. Okay, so our 9th and 10th episodes. 9 was Brian Recker, not a Texan, but somebody who talked to us about Christian nationalism, and someone who I think he wrote a book called Hellbent, and talking about how Christians and their conversations about hell, which I had told him offline that when I was growing up here in North Texas, I'm Catholic. I sometimes had people telling me from a Protestant church that I was going to HELL because of that. And I, growing up in that way, thinking like, wow, do I not belong in this area because I'm Catholic? And so he and I had a conversation about that offline. But I wonder your thoughts about his conversation, especially in terms of messaging to Christians and what their message is here, and why like maybe we as Democrats are not part of that conversation.
Yeah. The big thing I take away from it, and it's so resonant from my experience growing up in Sherman, is that for most folks, they are only hearing one perspective on theology, and it's, I think, limiting, and it can be really damaging. I'm not here to say that my views on God or our spirituality are inherently superior than anybody else's. But I think for that particular brand of theology, that is what they're saying, that
Yeah.
theirs is the one true way, and you're either on board or you're not. And if you're on the out group and not the in group, you're going to hell.
Right.
And it can create this dynamic where can be really terrible to one another. And what I've found in my personal life is that it's usually people in the church who have driven folks out of church. So it's not usually Jesus or the Bible or anything like that. It's usually like someone who has kind of weaponized faith and hurt them with it. Um, like you, we had an off mic conversation about I had a Young Life kid. I was an air director for a nonprofit ministry called Young Life when I was in Sherman, and I had a kid who went with me to camp and had such a good time, had a great experience. He had heard the gospel in a really profound and compelling way, and he was so inspired by that he wanted to come home and rejoin his local church, because Young Life is not a church. It's a nonprofit. It's kind of like a para-church organization. But he rejoined his church and he went to camp with his church that next summer. And this kid is gay. And there were notes passed underneath his door saying, "You're a faggot.
Ugh. Yeah.
You're going to hell. You
Right.
should kill yourself."
Ugh.
And I've never
Stop.
been more angry to be associated with people who claim to be Christian, because even as like a young person, in high school, like I was no theologian, I was no great, student of seminary works or anything like that, but just the Jesus I had like heard about and read about in stories and from Veggie Tales, right? Like that
Hmm.
did not jive with my understanding of the love that we're supposed to be showing to each other. And so as that affects the broader conversation about what we're having, this kind of existential cataclysmic event coming down in 2030, I think we have to remember that people are only getting that one version unless we are able to find a way to enter the conversation. It is a very powerful thing to contend with. I mean, how are you supposed to convince someone to vote for a Democrat? Like you said, kind of like you grew up thinking everyone was Republican, right? How are you supposed to convince someone to vote for a Democrat, even if they agree with them on every other policy position, if they believe that they are like somehow enjoy abortions, that they want to kill babies, right? Is very easy, actually, from my perspective, to understand a single issue voter like that, who says, I agree with you on public education, I agree with you on guns, I agree with you on taxes, I agree with you on the billionaire oligarchs and all these things, but if you're
Hmm.
pro-choice, I'm voting for the other guy. I can understand that if no one has actually had an actual theological conversation with them that is different from what they've only ever heard. And that takes patience.
I know, and I wonder how I can't be at the pulpit in every church, right? Like a Democrat can't be at every church gathering. So how do you break through? Because I understand why folks in a church might want to. They trust their pastor, they trust their priest, they trust the people that they're praying with, and the people that they have Bible study with, and they're telling them Democrats are the devil or whatever. And how do we break through is a question I have for the new year, like something I definitely want to understand better. And I wonder, is it through different forms of media? Is it people like us speaking up? And I want to be clear that even if you're not a Christian or if you're not religious, like this is still a podcast for you. Like this is an open space. It's not a Christian podcast, but we are providing maybe a different perspective of folks that are, who are of faith, and we want to have conversations. I've already talked to some of my friends who are Muslim, and I want to have them on the podcast and talk about their communities and what's going on here in Texas, because we have a really large growing population here, especially in my area where we've got several mosques. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. But I think what I took away.
100%. And I just think from a practical and tactical perspective, like I think we mentioned this at the top of the Brian Recker episode, is just we are the most churched per capita state in the
Church,
country.
yeah. Over 60% of adults identify as some form of Christian. But I think to your point and his is that what's going on now within the Republican Party isn't about Christianity, it's about Christian dominance, which I think turns a lot of people away from the faith. And that, as the three of us that we're talking are of faith and want to bring people back into that if they want to, if they are so called, because it's not about dominance, it's about love, and also how you treat your neighbors and what that means for immigrants. And I'm really proud of the Pope for speaking out about that, and the Catholic bishops across the country. So then our next few episodes were Julie Johnson, who's running for Congress now against Colin Allred, who dropped out of the Senate race. So that was a very interesting episode, and very grateful to her.
We should mention there's a third candidate in that race as well.
Who's self-identified as very progressive. So we appreciate that there are now 3 people in that race. It's going to be very interesting to watch what happens at which the new congressional district 33 after redistricting. But I think the question I had was, how does all this affect turnout? How is this going to affect us down the road and being able to flip? Because if we are so overly gerrymandered, then does that increase voter apathy? And also, is having a competitive primary good for all of us? I think so. A lot of people have said yes, because it increases the conversation about Democrats. Like, people have come away saying that having Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico in the same race is actually elevating the conversation about Texas and as Democrats, which I think is a good thing. And I've come out saying that I'm not necessarily for a slate where somebody has just handpicked everybody and we're going to go forth in the general. I think it's still, that seems to me anti-democratic in my opinion, but it's a good thing, I think, that we have a competitive primary and we are elevating that conversation.
Yeah, no, I think especially with the long view in mind, I totally agree with you. And I think Chairman Scudder and others who have said that the competition is welcome. And I think the reason why you want to see a good fight, I know people will bemoan like it's a waste of resources. We're lighting money on fire that we could use on the general election. I actually do think that having candidates be forced to talk to Democrats and forced to go, like when I say talk to them, I mean literally find them at the door, to get them on the phone with a phone bank, or to target them with mailers or what have you. They are going to be incentivized to have those people really well organized, to get that data file we talked about with Cliff, right? The van, get that cleaned up. Because if you're in a safe seat like the Colin Allred, Julie Johnson district, CD33 is even bluer than it was before, there is a temptation to be like, let me coast through this primary. I'm not talking about them specifically. I'm just talking about throughout the state. I think it's a good idea to have competitive primaries to force the candidates to have to defend their turf, because that helps everybody, because there are candidates above and below them on that ballot who will benefit from it, especially to have such a marquee race like you talked about with the Jasmine and James Tallarico. I think for both of them, it elevates the conversation, like you said, but it also elevates both of their profiles. They're both going to be more well known than they were before because of them being in the race. If only Jasmine had been in the race, she would have been as famous as she was before, but probably not all much more famous. But because there is an actual competition going on, she's going to get a lot of media that she wouldn't have otherwise, and discussion and articles and all the kinds of things. And same for James. Whoever comes out of that primary will be more well known, they'll be better prepared, and the state's Democrats will have been better organized.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the website. Zishan Hafiz is the person running in the 33rd congressional with Julie Johnson and Colin Allred. And apparently there's a fourth, Carlos Quintanilla. I'm also, it's a D+19 district, according to Cooks, which is incredible. That means it's the 60th most Democratic district in the United States, 60. So that's a pretty blue seat. And that is a lot of voters that we could turn out to help in our statewide election. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's really important to make sure that, whoever we are voting for, I'm not in that district, but that they are talking about turnout. What's the turnout game for that seat? So then our 11th episode was with the lieutenant governor, one of the candidates in the lieutenant governor race, Vicki Goodwin. And then the 12th, which was our just most recent episode, which was with the Gun Owners for Safety group, called Giffords. So former candidate Democrat and a gun owner here in the state of Texas. So With Vicky, I was really interested in, she was a part of that 2018 class of flipping a seat in Travis County, which was very interesting. She beat a long-term Republican. It was a contested primary fight, which was very interesting. And then talking about how she had flipped that race, but also reminding us just the importance of the lieutenant governor and the current person who holds that race, that seat, Dan Patrick, and his role in so many different things in the Senate and the impeachment trial and all those other things. So, but what were your thoughts on what she had to say, especially as flipping the state?
Yeah, I think she is on to something with trying to distill a message that can resonate across the state and be memorable, right? Kind of getting it down to 4 things. I think if she can hammer those in a consistent way, that'll be helpful. I know you're probably going to wince when I say it, but I'm just still so fired up about the whole Mike Collier bullshit.
Yes.
Oh man, what is
I
he
know you are.
thinking?
Yeah.
Oh, it bothers me so much. I'm gonna look right now live. I didn't
Right.
know this
Well,
game was gonna. I didn't know the answers to the game. I don't know what's gonna happen right now. I'm looking at Mike Collier on Instagram,
is he still a
and
Democrat on his? Yeah. So
first
just
word on his profile, Democrat.
yeah.
What? Who does
I
he
know.
think he's
I know. Well, so
fooling as running as
the
an independent?
listener, yeah, he's running as an independent. He had declared as an independent, and he's running in the race come this fall between the Republican and the Democratic nominee, which we assume at this point is Dan Patrick. And then I know Vicky is sort of polling better than anybody else in her race, but it's just like, how dare you? I mean, I think he's just trying to maybe potentially win on name ID. Like, I don't know. Like, what is his thought process? I'd love to know. But it is disappointing to
Like
say
just
the
run in the
least.
primary. Like
Yeah,
if you
just run
think
in the
it,
primary. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't get it. It is disheartening to see that he's doing that, and whether or not that takes away votes from a Democrat or a Republican. I think at this point we assume it might take away from a Democrat, given that he was a Democrat. Still is a Democrat.
He was the Democratic nominee for 3 cycles in a row, for lieutenant governor twice, and then as comptroller before that.
Yeah, that who
Oh
knows?
Lord.
Really disappointing to see, but I really appreciated her takes and having and coming on our podcast. And then our last one was with Giffords, which just came out. I think you and I was at least weary because we keep seeing the Charlie Kirk assassination. We have all these, what's going on in so many different every day. There's a new horror, and I'm thinking, is it appropriate to have this conversation about guns, especially from a gun owner? And I think we took away that it's always appropriate. Like, we have to talk about this. There's no time where we're not going to have gun violence here in the state of Texas or in the country. And so we have to talk about that. And just being reminded by Stephen, who is a Democrat, an Army veteran, a gun owner, and with Giffords, that in the state of Texas, just universal background checks is so widely accepted. It's something that we all want. 80-something% of us want background checks, which means that when you go buy a firearm, you have to have a background check to make sure that you don't have a felony, to make sure that anything else in your background that prohibits you from having a firearm. It just makes sense, and like why we can't get on board with that. And just the new laws that are coming out that people propose that seem to not make sense. Like an 18-year-old who could bring, it could be the fact that an 18-year-old could bring a firearm to the school, and just the things like that. Like, just doesn't make sense given the fact that we have such a widely accepted or desired want for gun safety legislation. So I thought that was a very interesting conversation with him, and one I'm was nervous about having, in the fact that we are talking about gun ownership and but also having gun safety.
Yeah, I think of the line from the West Wing after the terrorist attack, where he says, "This is the time for American heroes, and we reach for the stars."
Yeah,
I don't know that there is ever going to be the right time. Like, I just get so frustrated by the idea of, like, how dare you politicize this school shooting? How dare you politicize this theater shooting? How dare you politicize this out at the Allen outlet malls, which I've been to ever since I was a kid. I remember, and we talked about in the episode, just bawling my eyes out after the Sandy Hook happened. Like, we have to have these conversations. We can't be shy about it. We can't like worry that we're going to politicize it because it is political.
Hmm.
When 80+% of the people want something to get done and it's not getting done,
Yeah.
that's a democracy problem,
Right.
and we can't be shy about it.
Yeah. I think if that's a resolution for us is just not being shy about certain issues like that, like being a gun owner for safety, also being a proud Christian Democrat, all these things that I think folks have just not really had as a part of that conversation. And maybe we should have that. And it feels uncomfortable, but maybe we need to have uncomfortable conversations like that. And so I'll add that as a resolution, like uncomfortable talking points that we need to have as Democrats in the new year.
The stakes are too high.
Yeah. So those are our 12 episodes so far. I can't believe we had 12 plus our introduction. But I was wondering, just talking about that shooting that happened in the West Wing, one of our things that we do as a family is that we always watch the holiday episodes around the holidays, like the Thanksgiving Butterball turkey one. And then we watch the Yo-Yo Ma, like Christmas special where Josh is going through PTSD of the shooting. And it's such a great, you don't think like shooting and Christmas, but it was such a great episode, and it reminds me every year, like we tend to watch those episodes and what it means, like the realities of Christmas in this time of year. So, I was reflecting on like families that don't have their family members at Christmas, what's that like? And because of the shootings that we've had this year, also thinking about the flooding that happened in the summer and all those families that don't have their children. So things that we need to be doing as Texans that we think that we can, accomplish in the new year. I think we have to have those tough conversations.
Yeah, still got that green bow around my tree in the front yard, thinking about back to the July 4th flooding. Yeah, no, I think it really puts it in stark relief, doesn't it? That there are bigger issues than whether you're going to rub someone wrong or be perceived as too political. Like these issues matter. Let's forget about like the red and blue and the ups and downs and what district is plus this and plus that. Like at the end of the day, let's forget like these are real people's lives. It really matters. It's bigger than partisan politics. It's bigger than who's up or who's down, who's polling well. Set all that aside. Like we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Right. So I have 4 things on our list right now on my whiteboard. I've got 1, do you have a precinct chair ? 2, messaging discipline, affordability, working class voters. And then I've got 3, ROI on your fundraising and money, whether that's a reoccurring donation, not just to the top of the ticket. And 4, I had uncomfortable conversations. Are there any other ones that you think that we should add?
I think the one I would add here at the end for us, number 5, would be to be open to learning from others. And by that, I mean, I think it is really hard for a Texan to take advice out of state. And I mean, there is some truth to that, the wisdom we talked about with, running a district for your district. I get that. But for some of the things that are not as specific to a locality, I think there is a lot we can learn in the tactics and the structures, the systems of campaigning that we can draw lessons from in other states, Arizona, Georgia, Kentucky, literally every other state that has elected a Democrat more recently than we have statewide. So my personal resolution is to bring on more voices from out of state.
Right. I mean, certainly we can hear them out and hear what the success stories are and what happened. I mean, I think a lot of people, it's really funny. You hear people will inside Texas criticize folks who have consultants out of state or even these like DC consultants that they think are, out of touch with what we have here. But I don't think people also realize that we have a lack of people who are running campaigns and are consultants here in the state. So we have to, in some way, learn from the lessons of what other folks have done across the United States, what's worked, what's not worked, what's new. And maybe still grow within our own party people to run races because we don't have that many here in this great state. All right, that wraps up our resolutions and recapping our episodes. I'm wondering, Alex, before we leave, do you have any predictions for the new year?
Ooh, get into
Who do you think's going to win?
Procrastinating business. Here we go.
What do you think is going to win the primary? I mean, we obviously care about the
Gina
Senate
Hinojosa
race.
is going to win the primary for governor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We called
Calling
it.
it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
That was the big question you were asking, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Lieutenant Governor. I guess AG could be really interesting between Nathan Johnson, Joe Jaworski, and Tony Box.
That one seems like it's going to go to a runoff.
Yeah.
That's my prediction, is that it's going to go to a runoff.
And it seems like right now, Tony doesn't have as good name ID, but he's
put
the
out
latest to
jump in, though.
Yeah, he's the latest to jump in.
So we'll see.
He's never run before, but I think if people look at his bio, people are pretty impressed that he has a former federal prosecutor, veteran, now an attorney at a law firm. He's got a very similar story to mine, and so I'm very interested to hear from him. But come on, we got to talk about the Senate race. Like, what do you think? I know you're close to James Tallarico's race, but what do you think is going to happen?
And I'm not saying this as a shill for James. I genuinely don't know. I know that the last poll I saw had Jasmine out by 8, and that actually doesn't surprise me. If anything, I was actually a little shocked that it wasn't higher, because she's a member of Congress and James is a state representative. And she's been not only in Congress, but she's been on TV a lot. She's been very bookable on news and politics, and I see her in magazines, and she's everywhere. She's got a real knack for attention, and in this kind of a environment, that's can be a really, really beneficial. I think a lot of people also forget she was the co-chair of Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, and she has she has a lot of connections through the vice president and all the people who worked on that race. And so she has a lot of DC connections that can help her. A lot of celebrities that she can do collaboration videos with and these things. Yeah. So I was actually surprised that the gap was actually only 8 points, right? Like a single digit. That's a very respectable lead, but I think this is going to be actually a very competitive primary. And I don't know who's going to win. And I stand by the fact, the opinion that I said earlier, which is whoever comes out of it, I think is going to be much better suited to go against Ken Paxton or John Cornyn, most likely Ken Paxton, because of it. Cards on the table. The only thing I'm concerned about is if we somehow figure out a way to jazz up turnout for Ken Paxton that wouldn't have otherwise been there. Yeah. Like if if they're like, I don't like Ken Paxton, but I just can't stand James Tallarico, or I just can't stand Jasmine Crockett. Right. If one of those things happens, if we can get our candidate through the nominating process without them having a strong negative polarization effect, right, I think that's the only thing I'd be concerned about, is if the primary were to get nasty and produce that kind of effect.
Yeah. Well, I think like, are we going to flip a seat or statewide come the fall? And I think one of the things that I've reflected on is like, are we going to have a blue wave, and is it going to be bigger than 2018? And you think about, like, for every action, there's a reaction. Like Trump and what he's been doing, is there going to be a bigger reaction? Kind of like a pebble in a pond versus a big rock in an ocean. Like, are we going to have a bigger wave because there's more rock here, with his actions and how horrible that they've been in terms of just relationally to what happened in 2016? And I'm wondering if that's the case, but I also hate to talk about blue waves in terms of that, because it seems so passive, and we forget all the work that we actually did in 2018 and all the people that like stood up and started doing more. And I think that's something we've heard a lot from folks they hadn't really been active in 2016 until Trump was elected, and that really spurred them to action. And so we have to not only want or hope for a blue wave, but also one where we're like helping it along, right? Like we have to like make it bigger through our works. And I'm hoping that happens. And I think my prediction is that we're going to have a bigger wave. I'm hoping that carries us through to the 2 or 3 points that we only have to make up from the 2018 election, where Beto only lost by a few points. And I'm hoping that happens in at least one of our statewide races.
Yeah.
And then,
it was not just Beto. It was Beto and newly independent Mike Collier, and it was Justin Nelson, right, for Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General in 2018. And I agree with you. I think it will be a bigger wave in 2026 than it was in 2018. But the wave will fall on, if we're going to continue the metaphor of a wave, it's going to fall on a state with lines that were drawn differently. So I think it might be discouraging if you are just looking at, seats flipped or something like that. But if you're looking at the overall turnout, like we always say, you can't gerrymander a statewide race. I think that the margins are going to get way better on the statewides. I'll be really interested to see that if that wave is big enough to overcome even these really grossly drawn districts, which it can. I think the phrase is a dummy mander. Sometimes when a party gerrymanders their seats too much, they can actually cause themselves to lose seats, because to make seats more Republican, you have to draw them draw support out of some of the other districts. And so by weakening some of these other districts, you may be creating opportunities where you didn't think you had a problem. Like, here's what I mean. If the Beth Van Dyne district, which is drawn to be very Republican, has the kind of movement like we saw in the special elections, like in Tennessee and elsewhere, Beth Van Dyne is not going to be a member of Congress anymore.
I know. Yeah.
And
hopefully.
if that's happening in a seat like that, we could see a big turnout shifts in congressional seats and state House seats, state Senate seats, but also in these judges. I just think Vicki Goodwin said it this way. Sometimes the Democratic Party doesn't dream big enough. I think this can be a really, really big election for us. But like you said, it's going to take all of us doing the work.
Right. We can't forget that. We did all the work in 2018. Got us close. We got to do it again. All right. That's it for our recap, resolutions, and predictions episode. I guess we will see y'all in the new year, where we've got a lot of new fun guests that we're going to have on, especially ahead of the primary. And we will say Happy New Year and God bless Texas.
God bless Texas.
You can follow us on all socials at Mission Texas Podcast. Email us at missiontexaspodcast@gmail.com. This episode is edited by Juan Jose Flores. Our music bumper is by Adam Pickerel, and our cover art is by Tina Sohn.